Okay. Let me make sure it's recording. Okay, we are recording. Okay, so welcome, guys. Welcome again to this is Women of the Bible series. This is part 3. This is Miriam. And so I want to, like always, we have been talking about the foundation and making sure that we are just getting a good foundation and learning how to dive in and seek God for revelation and just wanting to understand His Word. So we have been talking about exegeting as opposed to eisegeting. So we want to get the correct context and historical context of what we're reading. So I've encouraged you to, whenever we do our focus scriptures and our reference scriptures, to make sure that you are reading 3 chapters previous to that particular chapter you're reading and 3 chapters after. You can also do the 5, 1, and 5, which means you are reading the 5 scriptures prior to the scripture in question, and then the 5 scriptures after, because we want to make sure that we are well trained students of the Word and in His Word and the truth, right? So we don't want to add to, we don't want to subtract from His Word, and we want to have full understanding, and we want to bring our full self. We want to come and we want to think. We want to use our brain. We want to use the intelligence that He's given us. So we want to bring our critical thinking to this. I don't believe that God doesn't mind us have asking questions. So this is why we have kingdom studies. This is why we have Bible studies, right? And also we want to edify the body. We want to make sure we are lifting up one another. We want to make sure that we are pouring into one another and that we are supporting one another, right? So again, that's my little spiel, but we're going to get into this. So with that being said, the context for us, we can't study Miriam without, passing by and reading about Moses and Aaron, right? So Miriam, we all know, is Moses and Aaron's sister. She's the oldest, actually. And if you read the reference scriptures, which is Exodus 2, 1 through, I believe, 10, then you will know that she was the little girl when her mother put Moses into that basket into the Nile or whatever, and Pharaoh's daughter was down there and found him. She was the little girl that asked if she could go get the mother of the baby, which she did. She went to go get her mother. So she went to go get her mother. So that it was kind of like an introduction to who Miriam was. She is the sister of Moses. She's the oldest sister of Moses. She's the oldest sister of Aaron. I believe she's 3 years older than Aaron. Right. So we start off with that. And then, you just kind of get into the whole story. Like the story about Moses and Aaron is basically the Exodus, right? It is the story of deliverance, salvation, redemption, right? And it's also, to me, foreshadowing Jesus, because when God delivered them through the Red Sea, basically, it's like He did. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Let me slow down so I don't get ahead of myself. So Exodus 2, we already established who Miriam is. She is a sibling. She is the oldest sister of Moses and Aaron, right? And then we go into more of the story of Moses and who he is and all of that, and Aaron. And I also want to point out, to me, because I've been just, I guess, a personal um desire is to basically want to understand more about siblings. So the question was posed to me is like, what is the purpose of siblings? And I honestly want to ask that question as well, because we all have our thoughts about what it means and what it is, right? So it always catches my eye or my attention when I find siblings in the Bible and how they relate to one another and how they get along or don't. Right. And just exactly what role does she play? And that was one of the key questions that we were wanting to discuss today is like, what is the roles of Miriam to Aaron and Moses? She's their sibling, she's their oldest sibling. And, there's some things that she did that wasn't so good that she got punished for. So that's one of the things. So we want to talk about that. And so we know that the story of Exodus is basically about redemption, right? God delivers the Israelites from slavery, from Pharaoh, from Egypt, right? And that's a foreshadowing, the ultimate spiritual redemption of Jesus Christ. And we'll go through that. So, he, through their back and forth with Pharaoh, because God told Moses to go and tell Pharaoh to let the Israelites come and worship me, and he didn't want to. So God hardened his heart basically, and he did 10 plagues on Egypt, right? Or in Egypt. And that 10th one was the one that basically, like, you know what? Let's just go ahead and let these people go. Everybody was just wanting to send them away or whatever. And read the story. Like, he basically had made provisions. He basically told them to go and ask for their silver, ask for their gold, basically plunder the Egyptians. They were able to take their flocks, their herds, and everyone and go. Right, that last plague was the 10th one, which is basically God struck their firstborn, so all of men and beasts. So your animals, the firstborn of the animals, and the firstborn of the men, the male seed. Okay, that he struck them, he killed them. So, but in that, the whole foreshadowing thing is that God had told or gave instructions to Moses to tell the Israelites, the people, to basically sacrifice a unblemished lamb and then put the blood of the lamb on their posts, right? And then he would have, when the destroyer came and passed over, he would pass over them once he saw the blood. So that is the foreshadowing of Jesus Christ. So in that, and then there's also, all the different things that he established once they were free, or they became free of Pharaoh. It's the establishment of the new year, like that first month when they literally crossed through the Red Sea. It was the Exodus of New Year. And then unleavened bread, because they left in such a hurry that they didn't have time for the bread to rise. So it's unleavened bread. And so he established all of these festivals, all of these feasts, all of these different things, so that it's a covenant and a remembrance for them to remember what he did, what great power. And by, he is the true God that delivered them from Pharaoh, okay, from Egypt. It brought them out of slavery into their own land, the promised land of milk, flowing with milk and honey. Okay, so that was the promise, and he delivered. And there were some things through that journey, because they literally journeyed through the wilderness. He didn't take them through the shortcut way. He took them around the long way, and again, sometimes in God's way, his provision, he's protecting us, so it's so many gems in this, right? One of the reasons why I picked Miriam is because, again, the relationship she had, as the Bible described her as a prophetess, Miriam the prophetess, right? And so, and it didn't really, it doesn't really even tell us what what she said or what she did to be a prophet. She was labeled and called a prophetess. She was a worshiper, because as soon as they got through the Red Sea, she took her tambourine, the ladies followed her, and they all sung and danced, right? So, you know, she was a worshiper, she was a prophetess, she was the sibling. Then we wanted to also concentrate on when she and Aaron decided that they wanted to question Moses as the leader because of who he married. So I just felt like this is so the same, even in today's time. It's like, people want to question who God chooses to be in, to be the chosen one that he chooses to speak through or used in whatever way he chooses to use. To me, it wasn't good enough for her that she was, with them, or, accompanying Moses and Aaron, because Aaron too were questioning, who he married, and why why is it said that, the question was, did he not speak through us as well? And it's like, when you read that passage, it literally says that God came down and called all three of them to the and to the tent of tabernacle. And it was like, man, can you imagine God calling you out? Like, no, I cannot. Right. But it's so many nuggets in this. It's too much to talk about in a half hour, 30 minutes, or hour, right? So that's why, it's good for you to read the Bible. Have your thinking cap on, have your critical thinking cap on. So we're just talking about those things because, again, we want to have the whole context. So literally from chapter 12 to 15, right? So we got chapter 2, Exodus, is when Miriam it introduces her as that young girl that basically went to go get his mother, Moses' mother, so she can nurse him for Pharaoh's daughter. That's Exodus 2. And then she is brought up again once he delivers them literally through the Red Sea. And that is Exodus chapter 15. So from 12 to 15. And I do have, excuse me, I do have that information in the chat for you, just so you have it. But it shows you that whole back and forth with Pharaoh, all of the plagues, everything. And then chapter 15 is where he do that. I mean, he split the Red Sea where they walk through on the ground. And as you read it, you get to the details. And so it said that the angel of the Lord went from before them and came on the back of them. And so did the pillar of cloud. So on one side of it, the pillar of cloud showed darkness and fog, basically. And they didn't move. And that was to the Egyptians. And then on the other side, for the Israelites, it was light for them to be able to see in the night. And so it's like they journeyed through that sea, I want to say all night. It's crazy. Like, please read it. It's real, like, you'd be like, man, so it's just so many things that he did to show he is God. Because also to understand that Pharaoh is it's not like just a name of a man. It's basically like, they're supposed to be divine, and they're the leader, they're the king, right? And so God is making it known that he is the true God. He is the only true God. So he's above any God, Pharaoh and whomever else, right? So that last plague where he killed the firstborns, really, that's what did it for them, because it showed that he is truly God. And when he split that sea and they walked through that, and then he literally washed them up in the sea, it was made known. So people start to fear. The Israelites begin to believe. And not soon did they just see that. They start murmuring and complaining in the wilderness. So it's like, you brought us here, we could have just stayed in Egypt and died. What did you brought? Like, so it's just to show that whole story and journey, because again, Miriam is in all of this. And it shows where he will call Miriam, Aaron, and Moses. He would call Moses and Aaron. So I was just looking at the bond, or at the I don't want to call it a need, but just the fact that he allowed his brother to be his wingman, basically. So even when they were fighting against them, Amalek, because that's after that miraculous victory of salvation from Egypt to pass through the Red Sea, they had another battle against the Amalekites. So it's very good. So that's basically the context of that, of this whole story. Like I said, you can't talk about Miriam without talking about Moses and Aaron. She is literally connected to them in the Bible, in Exodus and in Numbers. Numbers 12. I said 15. It is Numbers 12. So sorry. So it's Exodus 2 for when it shows her as a little girl, and then it's Numbers 12 for when she goes into questioning. Her and Aaron goes into questioning Moses about his wife, the choice who he chose to marry. So that's the context. Exodus 2, chapter 2, 1 through 10, Exodus 15. So just read that whole chapter because it just gives you that whole context about what is going on. But the song and dance is basically Exodus 15, I believe it's around 2021. And we'll read too, because I don't want you to think I'm just coming out here telling my own story. All right. So it's Exodus 15:20, like I said, 2021. And so we talk about that, and then we talk about the fact that she questioned who his choice of his wife is. So we're going to read. I'm going to read. Let's see, we're going to read that Exodus 15. So this is the Song of Moses. Again, this is literally when he brought them through the Red Sea. And then it says, then Moses and the children of Israel sang this song to the Lord and spoke, saying, I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. And this is Moses now. He got this whole song from Exodus 15, verses 1 all the way through 19, right? And so the Song of Miriam, and this is where it brings her in this story. It says, then Miriam, the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took the timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. And Miriam answered them, sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and its rider, he has thrown them into the sea. Right? So again, it's showing she's a leader. It's showing that she's a prophetess. She's a prophet. And the fact that, again, she is a sibling of Moses and Aaron. And again, we can get into it if you want to talk about it. It's because, Moses was, again, saved because at that time they were killing the Hebrew boys. So, it's quite, again, when you think about the Bible, it's such a thing to see how it's really just one after God, just talking through to us through different people, but saying just one after, you can just tell it. So it's like, okay, they're killing Egypt now, the Egyptians, trying to kill the Hebrew boys, right? Because they were afraid that they were going to become too numerous and become too much or too big, so they wanted to kill the boys and save the girls. And his mom basically tried to hide him until she couldn't no more, and then put him in this little basket and sent him down the Nile. And that's when Pharaoh's daughter saw him, and then they raised him as an Egyptian, but he is a Hebrew. So then 13 chapters later, now, these plagues are coming against Egypt because they wanted to, keep enslaving the Hebrews, the Israelites. And then, one of the plagues is that they killed the firstborn. So again, like, it's all of these different things in there. Just if you read it, it starts to just really make sense and it starts to click. So it's that two little verses about Miriam in this chapter And then again, it goes into, I gave you again the context. It goes into, um, you know, they cross the Red Sea, they get into the wilderness, they start to mumble and complain. They don't have food, they don't have manna. And this is when the Lord, again, is a pillar by day and a fire by night the whole time, right? Another miracle. Then he feeds them manna, which is bread from heaven, quail at night, and then he gives them water through a rock. So it's like he keep on proving who he is. He doesn't have to, right? He doesn't have to, and he chose Moses, right? Again, Miriam's brother. So then I want to also take our attention to Numbers, chapter 12. And this is where she gets into it, a little bit of trouble because she's questioning the woman that he decided to marry, right? So I'm going to read the whole chapter, 16 verses. So this is Numbers chapter 12, verses 1. Then Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. So they said, "Has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us also?" And the Lord heard it. Now the man Moses was very humble, more than all men who were on the face of the earth. And that is very interesting. He said, "Then all men who were on the face of the earth." Man. So verse 4, suddenly the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, "Come out, you three, to the tabernacle of meeting." So the three came out. Then the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud. Like I said, would you want God to come down? I would not. Then the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud and stood in the door. He stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both went forward. Then he said, "Hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak to him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. I speak with him face to face, even plainly, and not in dark sayings. And he sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?" And when he says, I speak with him face to face, even plainly, that means appearing, and not in dark sayings, that means riddles, right? So, and he sees the form of the Lord. Thank you. So he was like, "Why were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?" Verse 9. Excuse me. So the anger of the Lord was aroused against them, and he departed. Verse 10. And when the cloud departed from above the tabernacle, suddenly Miriam became leprous, as white as snow. Then Aaron turned toward Miriam, and there she was a leper. So Aaron said to Moses, "Oh, my Lord, please do not lay this sin on us, in which we have done foolishly, in which we have sinned. We have sinned. Please do not let her be as one dead, whose flesh is half consumed when he comes out of his mother's womb." Verse 13. So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, "Please heal her, O God, I pray." Then the Lord said to Moses, "If her father had spit in her face, would she not be shamed 7 days? Let her be shut out of the camp 7 days, and afterward she may be received again." So Miriam was shut out of the camp 7 days, and the people did not journey till Miriam was brought in again. And afterward the people moved from Hazareth and camped in the wilderness of Paran. So yeah. So that's interesting. And so that's what I want to talk to us about, because like I said, it's so many things in this in this story with Miriam, even though she's in it very few times, she's so connected to the story of Moses and Aaron that he, he he made it a point to put her in there. And then if you go to those references that I gave you for your assignment, then you'll see the genealogy she's mentioned in there, So, God does nothing without purpose. So, you know, it's important for us to understand. And I do believe that it's important for us to understand, you know, family, your brothers and sisters, siblings, relationships. It matters. And it also matters too, just literally looking at this, you know, she spoke against, I read it to so that it's like, has the Lord, the way she asked the question, has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? And it's like, why or what was the problem with Moses and who he married? So again, like we still have these same issues. People have issues with who you married, or like what was the problem? What was the problem, and why did it make God so mad? You know. So that was the question I wanted to pose to us, right? Let me bring up the question so I can read it. I should put it in the chat. So the first question I have, right, is like, you know, when they were in the wilderness and they were facing doubt, basically, they grumbled and complained. Even after he kept showing them, I feel like God has been so generous, so like forbearing with us, even today, like the breath we're breathing, you know what I mean? Like he's forbearing. Everything's held up by him. And I think that we just take so many things for granted. So, they're in the wilderness. Again, we're not much different. They're in the wilderness. He literally just saved them. They literally complained. They complained a couple verses later, right after they just got delivered and saved from Egypt. And they complained. And it's like, oh, you would think, because again, you have the Bible, you have the word, so you, of course, can say, oh, da da da, but would you? Because we complain every day. We complain every day, and we're definitely not in that type of bondage that they were in, right? So they're facing doubt in the wilderness. The Israelites like frequently grumbled and complained. So my question is like, what are some common situations where we might experience doubt or complain despite having seen God work in our lives before? Over and over again. And I generally tell, like, from coaching people, I generally tell them, like, have a list, have a journal, have a prayer journal, like just so you can see the wins every single time when the enemy come to you and try to, fake you out. Like nothing's happening, nothing is working. Every single time. Every single time. It's like, just think about it. What common situations where we might experience doubt or complain despite having seen God work in our lives before? And that's every day. That's on an everyday thing, right? So that was one question I wanted us to talk about. And let's see. The other thing, because we're doing our context, we're reading, basically you should have read from chapters 12 through 18. I wanted to mention Moses, after they became free, true freedom, right? And going to the promised land. And Miriam didn't get to actually go, neither did Aaron. But that the wife, father, his name is Jethro. He came to basically visit and bring the wife and the sons, two sons. And Moses, he observed what was interesting to me is that he's a Midianite. He hearing about God's deliverance, he literally also worshiped God and sacrificed to God, just thanking him for that, right? I thought that was very interesting. And then he observed Moses as he literally sat there from morning to evening, judging the people, right? They would come to him, stand in front of him, and he would judge them, give them, what to do, whatever. And he was like, "You're gonna wear yourself out doing this." And he gave him sound advice, counsel, right? Call it counsel. And he basically told him to, pick men that doesn't covet, that's trustworthy, that he can trust, put them over thousands, hundreds, and tens, right? And so that's what Moses did. And then they would basically judge amongst themselves, and then bring him the most complicated ones, the more difficult ones. And so I thought that was very interesting. And then he just went on about his way. So I'm like, so again, it's leadership. And it is, that's another thing that we see. Again, Miriam leadership, Moses leadership, Aaron's leadership, right? Just the leadership qualities of these people. Again, another thing for me to put with, purpose of siblings. So that question for me that I wanted to ask is, when have you seen the benefit of a mentor or a trusted family member offering wise counsel to lighten a heavy load? Again, like this story you should be able to relate in so many ways, right? So just think about it. It's like, when have you had that benefit of a mentor or trusted family giving you wise counsel? And I do believe that that's one of the reasons why we have family, and why we have, God put that example for us: father, mother, siblings, trusted people that he can put in your life to give you counsel when there is a lack or a need, or someone who is not um, living up to, or even if that is missing. So say like it's a single family household, or the mother's widowed, or whatever it is. He always seems to always give us what we need: wise counsel in someone else, right? So that's another thing I wanted to bring up. Mhm. And then the other thing is remembering, how he brought them out, and how he delivered them, and how he, was establishing these first things: the Passover, the unleavened bread feast, all these different things, all these memorials he was doing basically, and just helping them to establish, to remember, deliverance. Essentially, that's what it is. And so the other question, or the last question that I wanted to ask, is like, what are some ways, personal or communal, that you practice remembering and celebrating God's acts of deliverance in your own life or community? And I thought that was a good question, because we tend to sometimes think about what he's done for us individually, and then we'll sometimes think about what he's done for our families. We don't think about it enough time, though. Enough, like we need to be in constant remembrance of that. And so that's one of the reasons why I believe he definitely established these things for them to remember. And so they can keep on telling their families, their kids through the generations. Because that's one of the things he did mention, is to teach your children, talk to your children about what was done. Because when you do celebrate or do these celebrations, they're going to ask, what is this about? And you tell them, this is because the Lord has delivered us from slavery, from the Egyptians, and brought us out. Like, so it's a remembrance thing. So yeah, it's like, I think when you start to also add to that the acts of deliverance in your community, and it's like you barely pray for your community. Like, I'm thinking about myself. I try to remember to pray for my neighborhood, to pray for, the neighborhood and the community and the city, and you know what I mean? Like, but that's honestly not something that you are aware of or you think about every day, because we're just naturally selfish like that, right? So I thought that was a good thing to bring to our attention. Like, what are some ways, personal and communal, okay, that you practice remembering and celebrating God's acts of deliverance in your own life or community? Because we're supposed to love one another and we're supposed to bear with one another, right? So we're supposed to want this. And I think when we do that, starting off with ourselves and with our own community, that would just keep paying forward. So yeah, like, I think that's a good thing for you to do. And so that's just some of the lessons and questions that I wanted to present to us, as a learning and diving deeper into this word. And I'm gonna close on this. Like, the other thing that as I was studying this week about Miriam, that song came to me, Holy Forever. That original is originally by Chris Tomlin, but I think I listened to the CC Winans version more. But I just wanted to just, encourage you. Listen to that song, listen to the words, and he is holy forever. I just this whole book, Exodus and then Numbers and everything, just thinking about his great acts of power and redemption and salvation and all these different things that he's done and he's still doing for us today. So that's it, guys. I just wanted to, share that with you. And I hope that you guys, again, think on these things that we discussed. If you have any questions, then feel free to ask them. Yeah. So just, read, do your reading, do your foundational reading, read the text, read it in its context, and just come with your minds thinking critically, like thinking, asking questions. So, God, let's be hungry for God's word. Let's apply his word. That's what this whole purpose is about, just learning his word, learning about him, seeking him, and then applying what we learn in our lives. So that's it for us, guys. I will see you for the next Kingdom Studies. It will be announced, and just look for it in the email. You can sign up for the next Kingdom Studies at truelifeministries.net. NET. All right, guys. Thank you. Bye.